The Korean Mafia boss married the black maid. Everyone mocked until she took down assassins alone. The conference room went silent as Kang Min-jun placed his hand on her shoulder. His voice was cold enough to freeze blood. Some of you thought I made a mistake, that I married beneath me. His captains stared at the woman they had called the help. Let me be clear. This woman killed 3 trained assassins in my kitchen. Alone. With cleaning supplies. Mrs. Shin, the woman who had mocked her for months, went pale. She is not a decoration. She is not a token. Min-jun's eyes swept the room like a blade. She is your queen. And if you disrespect her again, you disrespect me. One by one, they bowed. But 2 days earlier, none of them knew the truth. 2 days earlier, she was just the maid who had somehow tricked their boss into marriage. This is the story of how a woman they underestimated became the most feared person in Seoul. And it started with a contract no one thought she would survive. In the world of men like Kang Min-jun, a wife was currency. A flawless accessory meant to be photographed at charity galas and forgotten in private. No one ever told him he had married a ghost. Min-jun was the head of the Biko Syndicate, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in South Korea. His empire was built on 3 things: fear, precision, and image. At 34, he had eliminated every rival who dared challenge him. He owned politicians, judges, and half the luxury real estate in Gangnam. His world ran on calculated risk and cold efficiency. Emotion was a liability he could not afford. But even kings need queens. Or at least the appearance of one. The old guard in his organization had been pressuring him for years. A man in your position needs a wife, they would say. Stability, legacy, legitimacy. Min-jun knew they were right. A wife would soften his image with the political elite. It would make him appear less dangerous to the international investors whose money he laundered. And if she were foreign, even better. It would signal modernity, global reach, progressive thinking. So he approached marriage the same way he approached everything else. As a transaction. His assistant presented him with a portfolio of options. Actresses, models, daughters of wealthy families. All beautiful. All expensive. All too complicated. Then, at the bottom of the stack, there was Diana. 28 years old. American. No family. No social media presence. She worked as a maid in one of his luxury hotels in Itaewon. His assistant had included her file almost as a joke. Sir, if you want someone who will ask no questions and cause no trouble. She was pretty in an understated way. Soft features, intelligent eyes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired. She looked invisible. She looked perfect. The meeting was arranged in a private room at the hotel. Diana arrived in her uniform, smelling faintly of lavender cleaning solution. She sat across from him with her hands folded in her lap, her posture straight but not stiff. Min-jun laid out the terms with the detached professionalism of a business negotiation. I need a wife. You need security. This is a contract, not a romance. You will live in my home. You will appear at events when required. You will be respectful and discreet. In exchange, you will have financial security, legal citizenship, and protection. Diana listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked only one question. Will I be safe?
Min-jun almost smiled.
Yes. You will be the safest person in Seoul. She nodded slowly. Then I accept.
No tears. No excitement.
Just a calm, measured decision. He liked that. 3 weeks later, they were married in a private ceremony with no guests and no cameras. She signed the papers with steady hands. He transferred the first payment to her account before they left the office. It was the most efficient wedding he had ever heard of. When he brought her home to his penthouse in Cheongdam, the reaction from his inner circle was immediate and brutal. His captains were horrified. His second-in-command, a ruthless man named Director Shin, could barely hide his disgust. Sir, with respect, what are you thinking? She is a maid. Min-jun's expression did not change. She is my wife. That is all you need to know. But the whispers had already begun. The wives were even worse. Mrs. Shin, the queen bee of the syndicate's social circle, wasted no time gathering the other wives for an emergency tea session. Have you seen her? She does not even know how to dress. I heard she worked in housekeeping. Literally clean toilets. Can you imagine? They called her the charity case, the handmaid, the stain on the family name. They placed bets on how long the marriage would last. 3 months, tops. He will get bored and send her back to whatever slum she came from. They were certain Min-jun had made his first real mistake. But Diana did not react the way they expected. She did not cry. She did not lash out. She simply existed in their world with an eerie, unshakable calm. She wore the simple dresses Min-jun's assistant bought for her. She attended the dinners and galas without complaint. She smiled politely when spoken to and never asked for anything. To the syndicate's inner circle, she was an absurdity. Puzzle they could not solve. Why was she so calm? Why did she not seem afraid? Min-jun watched her carefully in those early weeks. He had expected nervousness, maybe gratitude. What he saw instead was control. She moved through his penthouse like she was mapping it. Her eyes tracked exits, sightlines, patterns. When his guards followed her on her errands, she never looked back at them directly. But he could tell she knew exactly where they were. When she cooked, her knife work was too precise, too efficient. These were not the hands of someone who had only worked in hospitality. But he dismissed it. Trauma, perhaps. Poverty taught people to be alert. He did not dig deeper. That would be his mistake. The test came 4 weeks into the marriage. Mrs. Shin organized a welcome dinner for Diana at an exclusive restaurant in Gangnam. It was not a welcome. It was an execution. The wives of the Biko Syndicate's highest-ranking men gathered around a private table like a panel of judges. They wore designer hanbok, diamonds glittering at their throats and wrists. Diana arrived in a simple navy dress. No jewelry except the plain wedding band Min-jun had given her. The contrast was intentional. They wanted her to feel small. Mrs. Shin waited until the first course was served. She set down her chopsticks with a delicate click and tilted her head. Diana SSI, you must feel so overwhelmed. Coming from your background into this world. The other women smiled into their wine glasses. It must be like a fairy tale. Diana finished chewing slowly, dabbed her mouth with her napkin, and met Mrs. Shin's gaze without blinking. It is not so different, actually. Mrs. Shin's smile tightened. Diana's tone remained calm, almost pleasant. In my old life, you learned quickly who had real power and who just wore it like a costume. The ones who talked the most were usually the least dangerous. The table went very still. It is the quiet ones you had to watch. Mrs. Shin's face flushed. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. Well, I suppose working in service teaches you observation. Diana nodded thoughtfully. It does. You learn to see what people do not want you to see. She let her gaze drop to Mrs. Shin's wrist, where an enormous diamond bracelet sparkled under the light. That is beautiful, by the way. Mrs. Shin preened slightly. Thank you. It was a gift from my husband. Diana tilted her head. The clasp is scratched, like it has been taken off and put on in a hurry. By someone else's hands, maybe. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mrs. Shin's face went from red to white. The implication was clear and devastating. The other wives looked away, suddenly fascinated by their plates. Across the room, Min-jun had been watching the exchange with his usual detachment. But now, for the first time, something shifted in his expression. Diana had not just survived the attack. She had dismantled her opponent with surgical precision. And she had done it without raising her voice. When they returned to the penthouse that night, he poured himself a drink and watched her as she removed her shoes by the door. You made an enemy tonight. Diana looked at him, her expression unreadable. I made a point. He took a sip of whiskey, which was, that I am not as soft as I look. Min-jun studied her for a long moment. No, I am starting to see that. She said nothing more. She simply walked to the kitchen and began preparing tea. But he stood there, drink in hand, wondering for the first time who exactly he had brought into his home. The days settled into a rhythm. Diana woke before dawn. She moved through the penthouse with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned not to take up space. She cleaned, though they had staff for that. She cooked simple meals. She read in the afternoons, always near a window. To Min-jun's security team, She was the easiest assignment they had ever had. She does the same thing every day. Boring. But if they had looked closer, they would have noticed the inconsistencies. Diana never took the same route to the market twice. She varied her schedule by 15 to 20-minute intervals, never establishing a predictable pattern. When she walked, she used reflective surfaces. Store windows, car mirrors, polished metal fixtures. She was always checking her surroundings. At the market, she would stop suddenly, pretending to examine fruit, forcing anyone following her to reveal themselves by adjusting their position. She timed the building's security rotations without ever appearing to watch them. And then there were her hands. Min-jun noticed them one evening as she chopped vegetables for dinner. Her grip on the knife was wrong. Not wrong for cooking. Wrong for someone who had only ever cooked. It was the grip of someone trained in close-quarters combat. The angle of the blade, the position of her thumb, the way her body was turned to protect her center line. He said nothing, but he began to notice other things. The scars on her knuckles, faded but unmistakable. The burn mark on her inner forearm, the shape too clean to be accidental. The way she never sat with her back to a door. One night, he woke at 3 in the morning and found her standing by the window, staring out at the city. She was perfectly still, her arms wrapped around herself. He almost called out to her, but something stopped him. There was something in her posture. Not sadness. Vigilance. Like she was waiting for something, or remembering something. He went back to bed without saying a word. But the question had planted itself in his mind. Who are you, Diana? He did not know that at that very moment, in a warehouse on the other side of Seoul, his name was being spoken with venom. Boss Go of the Warang clan sat at the head of a table surrounded by his most trusted men. They were losing. Badly. The Biko syndicate had been systematically dismantling their operations for 8 months. Territory, revenue, reputation. All gone. And it was all because of Kang Min-jun. Go slammed his fist on the table. He thinks he is untouchable. He thinks we are finished. The men around him nodded, their faces tight with anger and fear. We need to send a message, Go continued. Not to his businesses. Not to his men. To him. One of his lieutenants leaned forward. What are you suggesting? Go reached into a folder and pulled out 2 photographs. He laid them on the table. The first was Min-jun in a suit, leaving a corporate building. The second was Diana at a street market, holding a bag of vegetables. Go tapped her picture. This is his new wife. The men stared. A foreigner. A maid. No family. No protection. Go's smile was ugly. He is out of the city tomorrow night. 12 hours. The penthouse will be locked down. But my men are better. We go in quiet. We kill her. We make it messy. And we let him come home to the message. One of the men picked up Diana's photo, studying it. She looks harmless. Exactly, Go said. She is the softest target he has. His pride. His image. We take her, we break him. They finalized the plan with brutal efficiency. 3 men. Former military contractors. The best killers Go had left. They would bypass the building's security, cut the power, and eliminate her before Min-jun even knew something was wrong. It would be clean. It would be fast. And it would destroy Min-jun's reputation. No one would fear a man who could not even protect his own wife. As the meeting ended, the lead assassin, a man with a scar across his throat, slipped Diana's photo into his jacket. This will be the easiest job we have ever done. They had no idea how wrong they were. The night came fast. Min-jun left the penthouse at 6 in the evening. He had a meeting in Busan with a Chinese triad liaison. Critical. Unavoidable. He would not be back until morning. He stopped by the kitchen where Diana was washing dishes. I will be gone overnight. She looked up, water dripping from her hands. Be safe. He almost smiled. That is my line. She returned his look, her expression calm. Then we both should be. He left. The door locked behind him with a heavy, final click. Diana stood alone in the vast penthouse, 40 floors above the city. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the glittering sprawl of Seoul below. A summer storm was rolling in. Dark clouds blotted out the stars. Thunder rumbled in the distance. She dried her hands carefully and walked to the window. For a moment, she just stood there, watching the city. Then she closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. 10:47, power died. Not just the lights, everything. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The digital clocks went dark. The climate control system shut down. The backup generator did not kick in. It was a total blackout. Surgical. Intentional. The kind of thing that only happened when someone very skilled wanted it to happen. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have screamed or reached for their phone. Diana did neither. She set down the glass she had been holding. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. Her pupils dilated, adjusting to the sudden darkness. And in that moment, the woman Min-jun had married, the quiet maid who smiled politely and kept her head down, ceased to exist. In her place stood someone else. Someone older. Someone colder. Someone with a body count. She moved to the kitchen drawer, the one filled with cleaning supplies, and began pulling out items with calm, deliberate precision. A canister of industrial drain cleaner, a steel scrub brush with a weighted handle, a carbon fiber tension rod from the curtain rail. She tested the weight of each one. Her hands did not shake. Her expression did not change. This was not fear. This was preparation. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard the soft click of a door being breached. They were inside. She turned toward the sound, her body shifting into a stance that had nothing to do with housework and everything to do with survival. The maid was gone. The operator had returned. Now, you are probably wondering what happens next. 3 trained killers. 1 woman with cleaning supplies. Here is the thing. What you are about to see is not Hollywood. It is not flashy. It is not pretty. It is surgical. It is brutal. And it is very, very real. But if you are the kind of person who skips ahead, who scrolls past the good part, who does not appreciate the craft, you are going to miss the most satisfying 90 seconds of this entire story. So here is what is going to happen. I am going to show you exactly how a woman they called the Help dismantled a kill team in under 4 minutes. But only if you are still here. Let us see who makes it out alive. The first assassin moved through the living room like smoke. Night vision goggles bathed everything in green. Suppressed pistol held low and ready. He was a professional. Former ROK Special Forces. 12 confirmed kills. He had done this 100 times. Find the target. Neutralize. Disappear. He expected a terrified woman. Probably hiding in the bedroom. Probably crying. This would take 5 minutes. He swept past the kitchen. Clear. He moved toward the hallway. He did not see Diana. She was above him, pressed into the recessed lighting fixture in the ceiling. Legs braced against the support beams. Breathing shallow. Waiting. He passed directly beneath her. She dropped. Silent. Her arm hooked around his throat. The curtain rod already in her hand. She jammed her knee into his spine. Yanked back. Hard. His neck snapped with a wet crack. He did not even have time to gasp. She lowered his body to the floor without a sound. Took his night vision goggles. Took his weapon. Checked the magazine. 13 rounds. She ejected it. Cleared the chamber. Pocketed the ammunition. Left the gun. Too loud. She moved back into the shadows. 1 down. The second assassin was sweeping the hallway toward the bedroom. He was cautious. Methodical. He had heard nothing from his partner. But that was normal. Radio silence until the job was done. He advanced slowly, scanning every doorway. His hand was steady on his pistol. He had done wet work in Syria, Yemen, Manila. A housewife in a penthouse was nothing. He did not see the wire. Diana had strung it across the hallway at neck height, pulled from the decorative sculpture in the foyer, invisible in the darkness. His throat hit it at full walking speed. The wire bit deep. He staggered back, gagging, clawing at his neck. Blood poured between his fingers. Diana stepped out from the side corridor. She was holding the steel scrub brush. The handle was solid. Weighted. She swung it like a baton. Connected with his temple. The impact made a sound like a mallet hitting meat. He dropped. She crouched beside him, checked his pulse. Gone. She took his spare magazine, left the body. 2 down. The third man was the leader, the one with the scar on his throat. He was smart, experienced, and he had just realized something was very, very wrong. His men were not responding. The apartment was too quiet. He began backing toward the exit, weapon raised, scanning the darkness. Then he heard her voice, calm, cold, cutting through the silence like a blade. You should have researched me better. He spun, fired blind. 3 suppressed shots punched into the wall. Plaster exploded, but she was already gone. He advanced toward the kitchen, his breathing fast now, adrenaline spiking. He was no longer hunting. He was surviving. He rounded the corner, saw nothing. Then something hit him in the face. Liquid, cold, burning. The drain cleaner canister. Diana had thrown it hard. It burst on impact. Industrial strength chemicals splashed across his eyes, his nose, his mouth. He screamed, dropped his weapon, clawed at his face. The pain was unimaginable, blinding, searing. Diana stepped in close. She moved like water, smooth, inevitable. She picked up the tension rod, angled it downward, and drove it into the base of his skull, just below the occipital bone, straight into the brainstem. He stopped moving instantly. His body went limp. She pulled the rod free, let him fall. 3 down. The storm outside raged. Rain hammered the windows. Thunder shook the building. Inside, there was only silence. Diana stood in the center of the kitchen. 3 bodies. 0 inches. She walked to the sink, turned on the water, washed the blood off her hands. Her breathing was steady. Her expression was blank. She picked up the leader's pistol, disassembled it with practiced efficiency, laid the pieces on a clean towel like she was arranging silverware. Then she poured herself a glass of water, drank it slowly, and waited. She knew Min-jun would come. She knew what this meant. The life she had built, the quiet, fragile peace, was over. But her daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. No, wait. She did not have a daughter in this version. Scratch that. She was alone. And she had just killed 3 men in the home of the most dangerous man in Seoul. There was no going back now. Min-jun got the call at 2:37 in the morning. Sir, we have lost contact with the penthouse. His blood went cold. He did not ask questions. He did not wait for explanations. He ended the call, turned to his driver. Get me home. Now. They broke every traffic law in South Korea. The drive from Busan should have taken 3 hours. They made it in 90 minutes. His mind raced the entire way. If they touched her, if they hurt her, he would burn the entire city to the ground. The elevator opened. He stepped into his penthouse. Gun drawn, heart hammering. The first thing he saw was a body, sprawled in the entryway, neck broken. Then another in the hallway, face down in a pool of blood. Then the third in the kitchen, a metal rod protruding from the base of his skull. And standing at the sink, calmly wrapping a bandage around a shallow cut on her forearm, was Diana. She looked up as he entered. Her face was pale. Her knuckles were bruised. But her eyes were clear, steady, unshaken. She gestured at the bodies. They came in through the balcony, sloppy. His brain could not process what he was seeing. These were not amateurs. These were professionals, elite killers, and they were dead. All of them. He looked at the disassembled pistol on the counter, at the makeshift weapons, at the woman he had married, the woman he thought he knew. His voice came out rough. Who are you? She met his gaze without flinching. Someone who used to get paid to do this. The air between them was electric. Dangerous. He lowered his weapon slowly, walked toward her, stopped just inches away. She did not move, did not retreat. He reached out, took her bandaged arm gently in his hand, turned it over, studied the shallow cut. Then he looked at her face, really looked at her. And for the first time in his life, Kang Min-jun felt something he had not felt since he was a boy. Awe, unstoppable, overwhelming. You killed them. All three. Alone. Yes. Why did they come for you? She tilted her head. They came for you. I was just in the way. He let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. You could have run. You could have hidden. I did hide, she said quietly. And then I removed the threat. He stared at her. The soft-spoken maid. The woman his captains had mocked. The wife he had thought of as a convenience. She had just defended his home with more skill than his entire security team. She was not a victim. She was a weapon. And she was his. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, made a call. His voice was ice. Gather every captain, every lieutenant, every family head. I do not care what time it is. 1 hour. No exceptions. 48 hours later, the emergency meeting convened. The same room where deals were made and enemies were erased. The captains arrived tense, confused, afraid. They had heard rumors. Failed hit. Bodies. But no details. The heavy doors opened. And beside him, not behind him, not trailing meekly, but beside him walked Diana. She wore all black. Her hair was pulled back. The cut on her face was still visible. A clean white bandage on her forearm. Her presence in that room, the sacred inner chamber of the syndicate, sent shockwaves through the men. Mrs. Shin, seated in the gallery reserved for family, went pale. Min-jun took his place at the head of the table. Diana stood at his right shoulder. He let the silence stretch. Let them squirm. Then he spoke. 2 nights ago, the Warang clan sent a kill team to my home. His voice was soft, deadly. They sent 3 of their best. Former military, armed, professional. He paused. Let it sink in. They are dead. My wife killed them. Alone. Shock rippled through the room. One of the captains opened his mouth to speak. Min-jun cut him off with a look. They failed because they made the same mistake some of you have made. He looked directly at Director Shin. At Mrs. Shin in the gallery. They underestimated my wife. He placed his hand on Diana's shoulder. The gesture was possessive, protective, reverent. She defended our home. She eliminated the threat. She did what none of you could have done. His gaze swept the room like a blade. Your wives have opinions. They concern themselves with background, with status, with appearances. Let me be absolutely clear. This woman is the matriarch of the Biko family. She is not a decoration. She is not a mistake. She is the guardian of this family's heart. From this moment forward, her word is my word. Her safety is your highest priority. Her displeasure is my displeasure. He leaned forward. And my displeasure has consequences you cannot imagine. Director Shin's face was ashen. Mrs. Shin looked like she might faint. The war with the Warang clan begins tonight. But the new order in this family begins now. You will show her your loyalty. You will show her your respect. You will address her as ma'am. It was not a request. It was law. One by one the captains stood. One by one they bowed. Deep, formal, absolute. Director Shin hesitated. Min-jun's eyes locked onto him. Shin bowed. In the gallery, Mrs. Shin lowered her head, trembling. Diana said nothing. She did not need to. Her presence was the message. She had earned her place in blood, and no one would ever question it again. You just watched a woman go from invisible to untouchable, from mocked to feared, from underestimated to unmatched. Now let me ask you something. How many videos have you watched this week that made you feel absolutely nothing? How many creators put in zero effort, recycled garbage, and still got your view? I spent hours crafting this story, building tension, respecting your intelligence, giving you something worth your time. And here is the thing. If the story hit you, if you felt that satisfaction when she stood up and they bowed, and you do not subscribe, you are telling the algorithm to bury this. You are saying you would rather see lazy content than storytelling that actually respects you. I am not begging. I am just saying this. If you are the kind of person who appreciates the craft, who values stories with depth, who wants more of this, hit subscribe. Because I have got 47 more stories like this one. And most of you will never see them, unless you choose to. Your move. The war lasted 2 weeks. It was brutal, surgical, merciless. The Warang clan was not just defeated. They were erased. Boss Go was found in a warehouse with a single bullet in his head. His lieutenants disappeared. Their territory was absorbed. Their assets seized. The Biko syndicate stood alone, unchallenged, supreme, and at its center was a king and a queen no one dared to cross. Min-jun's reputation did not just recover. It became legend. The man who married a maid who killed 3 assassins with cleaning supplies. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered. They bowed. 3 weeks after the war ended, the penthouse was quiet. The storm had passed. The blood had been scrubbed away. The floors polished. The security upgraded. But the memory lingered. A silent testament to the woman who had defended it. It was a Saturday morning. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched out below, glittering and alive. Diana was in the kitchen. She was making coffee. No weapons, just peace. She wore a simple white shirt and jeans. Her hair was loose. The cut on her face had healed into a thin, pale line. She looked soft, gentle. But Min-jun knew better now. He stood in the doorway watching her. The cold, untouchable kingpin who ran Seoul's underworld was gone. In his place was a man who had finally found something he did not want to control. He wanted to protect it, cherish it, keep it. She looked up, a slight smile on her face. "You are up early." He did not answer. He crossed the kitchen, took her hand, the one that had killed for him, the one that had saved his home. He turned it over, pressed his lips to her palm. It was not a kiss. It was a vow, a gesture of reverence, of devotion, of surrender. "I thought I was giving you a better life," he said quietly. She looked at him, really looked at him. "You did. You gave me a reason to stop running." He pulled her close. For the first time in his life, Kang Min-jun let himself feel. Not control, not calculate, just feel. They stood there in the sunlight, a killer and a king, a maid and a queen, 2 people who had signed a contract and found something neither of them expected. Something real, something worth protecting. The world outside could whisper, let them. The wolves could circle, let them try, because they had learned the hard way. You do not underestimate the quiet ones. You do not mock the invisible. And you never, ever touch what belongs to the Biko family. He married a maid to fix his image. She became the most feared woman in Seoul. And somewhere between the blood and the quiet mornings, they became something neither expected. Partners, equals, home. This is where the story ends. But their legend was just beginning.